Hey everyone, I'm Alicia Esposito, and I'm thrilled to have joining me for today's Retail Reset live stream, Duncan Blair, who's the Director of Marketing for Article, a DTC furniture brand that provides modern, fashionable items at affordable prices. I mean, who doesn't love that? And most of all, they're really working to eliminate some of the frustrations and friction points in the online furniture shopping experience. And today, hoping to dig into some of the new realities and initiatives that Article has really been emphasizing in this current climate, some lessons learned and areas of focus for the future. So Duncan, really appreciate you taking the time. Really excited to hear all that's going on at Article.
Yeah, excited to be here.
So I know I gave a bit of a boilerplate into Article, you know, who the brand is, what you all stand for, but I'm sure I missed a lot. So as Director of Marketing, I mean, this is kind of what you do every day. So share with us the Article story, your mission, and your values, especially from a customer experience standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. So Article is really founded in order to make the furniture buying process easier. We really try to make it easy to create beautiful modern spaces. It really all started with one of the co-founders' trips to Asia, where he saw the discrepancy in pricing between sort of wholesale and retail here in North America. And so that was kind of the catalyst for investigation, if you like. Really where it went from there was taking the co-founders' skills in sort of technology and applying it to what's really been a sort of design-led industry up until now, and obviously traditionally sold through physical retail. So taking that sort of technological expertise and applying it to a sort of very traditional industry. And so beyond sort of just making the sort of value proposition or the prices more affordable, it's really about that entire end-to-end experience. So how do we, I guess like as an industry, furniture is typically, not only expensive, but also fairly time-consuming to shop for. Often the lead times are very long on products. You go in store and you'll see the sofa that you like, and it's going to be 8 weeks until it's actually delivered to your home. And also the customer service experience was fairly inconsistent. So there was a lot to build on for us there. So really sort of unpacked that entire end-to-end journey and said, how can we make this better? By going direct to consumer, by leveraging technology throughout the process, most obviously through our e-commerce sort of storefront, but also throughout the sort of logistics network and product procurement process, really throughout the entire journey. And again, with the sort of goal of making it easier to create beautiful modern spaces.
Yeah, that's great. I love that notion of taking ownership of a traditionally very cumbersome and extensive process, for the customer. I always think of, when I first moved into my house, this is a process we had to go through to find everything that we wanted and needed. I mean, it really did take months upon months to get all of those bits and pieces. So taking ownership of that, trying to make it as turnkey as possible, really, really drives value in the end. But what I find most intriguing about the Article model is that not just that you're direct to consumer, so you're taking the friction out of that, the retail partnership side and some of the costs surrounding that, but that you're digital first and digital only. So if we were to kind of take a look at the framework or blueprint of, your customer experience strategy, what are really the key channels or touches that you use to have that meaningful connection with your customer? Like I said, it's a long process for furniture shopping, and it requires a lot of education, consideration. So what really rises to the top in the Article experience?
Yeah, at a very high level, the way that we sort of think about our customer experience is marrying that best-in-class sort of digital experience with a best-in-class physical experience. So we actually spend a surprising, maybe to people outside the organization, a surprising amount of time focused on the sort of physical experience of our brand. So what happens sort of in that time, sort of post-purchase through to delivery and through the product ownership experience. it's incredibly important for us that we get that right. People are taking sort of, if you like, a leap of faith, buying a sofa or a chair or a table or what have you that they haven't seen or sat in. And so for some people, it can be very nerve-wracking. So that's a real sort of moment of truth that as the delivery truck sort of rolls into your driveway or up to your building, that moment as the delivery folks bring the new product inside, that's incredibly important to us. So really thinking about how we can apply the technology on top of that whole process to make, again, all of that easier, make sure you're informed about the whole process, make sure you know what to expect, when to expect it, and how things are going to unfold. But yeah, so, I think certainly there's a tremendous amount of work we do on the digital side, sort of upstream, if you like, pre-purchase, making sure people are informed and have the sort of tools and information they need to make what, for some people, again, is quite I guess like a challenging purchase. You're trying to match styles and often with existing decor and things, and try to figure out things that, while people are generally, or our customers are generally fairly creatively confident, they're not necessarily sort of interior design experts. So overcoming that sort of barrier of, will my blue sofa and green chair work together, that kind of thing. There's a lot we do in the digital space there, but yeah, as I say, once we kind of get into the purchase funnel and certainly post-purchase, it's really thinking about how do we marry that digital experience with a really incredible sort of in-person experience. And incredibly important for building trust with customers. A lot of our growth comes through that word of mouth, recommendation from a friend, because we're kind of overcoming that barrier of not seeing things in person. If you have a friend that says, "Hey, I've got an article sofa, the experience was incredible, I love the product," that's obviously the best endorsement we can get, and it really helps sort of fuel the marketing funnel that we have.
Yeah, I love that you really emphasize the post-purchase experience first, because in any conversation around customer experience or even marketing specifically, it's usually getting people from the top of the funnel down through, conversion, acquiring the customer, right? And then, the retention and loyalty stuff kind of comes after, but you're really zeroing in on fulfilling the brand promise, which I'm sure lends itself to more holistic metrics, different metrics even. And I know, and this is part of the reason why I really wanted to speak with you today, you've actually developed your own metric around customer experience for Article and how that's measured for the business. So I'd love to hear a little bit about, why that was needed, why you thought that was needed, and, what really goes into calculating ultimately what that result or that metric is.
Yeah, absolutely. So we at Article talk a lot about being remarkably better. That's sort of the benchmark that we use internally. And remarkably better means quite literally, better enough that you would tell a friend about it, so that you would remark on it, right? So, in order to measure whether or not we're remarkably better, we needed a way to figure out, are we achieving this? So we created the Remarkably Better Index, a little bit of a play on kind of baseball metrics here with an RBI. So RBI is sort of a scorecard we use to determine, are we delivering on our customer experience across our entire journey? So it really looks at both the sort of pre-purchase purchase experience, but also, delivery, customer service, all the various sort of touch points through the process, aggregates all that information primarily through customer feedback. So we run a number of sort of pre and post-purchase surveys. All that information is aggregated, it's tagged and sort of categorized, I suppose, and then we're able to derive from that sort of a general idea of where in the business we're over-delivering and where we've got work to do, so that we know the areas to focus on or sort of amp up in that pursuit of remarkably better.
Yeah, I love that. So how do you go from aggregating the data, analyzing the data, and actually turning that into action. Because I know anytime data is involved, there's always a bit of that gap. Like, oh no, we have it. Okay, well, how do you use it? I don't know. So what does that look like for Article? Because you're so focused on being remarkably better, which I love, by the way, and really applying that across all of these different crucial areas of the business, be it delivery, the fulfillment experience, marketing. I mean, what does that look like?
Yeah, so there I guess are two main components we think about with that. One is that obviously in order to get value out of it, it needs to be visible. And so we have a dashboard that everybody in the company has access to and is encouraged to look at frequently. And if you don't look at it, you're going to probably find out in a meeting at some point. Someone will call you out for not knowing what's going on at any given time. So there's this sort of culture of, I guess, transparency around this. And again, people are encouraged to sort of digest that information regularly. The second component is really using it, I guess integrating it into the culture of Article and how we sort of make decisions and things. So, frequently, really at every level of the company, but senior leadership meetings were often driven, or we have a sort of section dedicated to talking about the sort of gaps and opportunities in RBI. So we have this regular sort of cadence of what's going right, what's going wrong, and really helps us sort of prioritize our decisions. And that sort of flows right down through the company, so that it's structured in such a way that, no matter sort of the specificity of the problem you're trying to solve, you're able to derive some indication of whether or not you're sort of succeeding, or I guess getting better or not. So those are really the two things. One is sort of access, and two is really, baking it into the operation of the business.
I love that. So that data-driven nature is really integrated into what you guys do every day, which is fantastic. And I think, the notion of transparency is really important, and access, that tends to be a very crucial pain point for retailers specifically. And I think, especially in the current climate, we're hearing more about using data to move swiftly and to stay agile in the process. And, a lot of cases of brands really not just, responding to the situation at hand, but how consumers are responding, where their, time and efforts are spent, even, what they're telling you they need, or what their problems are, and responding to that. So, I mean, have there been any recent cases around how you guys have, turned that data or that insight into a new opportunity, or even just generally responded to the current situation to, fulfill that brand promise that we've been talking about so much today?
Yeah. So the biggest sort of change that we made in the business that was directly sort of derived from insights that came from this RBI process was the introduction of our own article delivery team, or we sort of call them ADT internally. As you may or may not know, most furniture brands fulfill with sort of a variety of external vendors, logistics vendors. We have done historically as well, but about 2 years ago, we saw this consistently in the data. We're seeing delivery as the biggest sort of, again, going back to that sort of moment of truth. It was the point that either sort of made or broke the purchase. We could do everything amazingly, and if the delivery experience went poorly, it kind of tarnished the rest of the entire experience. So really what we saw was an opportunity to take that piece on internally, have article staff driving article vehicles, wearing article uniforms, and delivering the sort of full article experience. So, over the last 2 years, we've built that out to now operate in five hubs, which serve 7 major cities across the US and Canada, and plans to expand that much further. I believe we're currently delivering sort of between 20 and 30% of our own orders with our delivery teams, and that's going to grow over time as sort of our network expands. But yeah, that was again, the real insight there was around the importance of that delivery experience, and just how key it was to the overall impression of the entire sort of transaction. Yeah, so that's probably the largest one. We've also seen, I should mention, we've also seen post-implementation delivery times have come down. Obviously, delivery time is a key metric here, and on average, our teams deliver about 2 days faster than our third-party delivery partners. But more importantly, the quality is much higher. Typically, customer satisfaction is sort of 20 to 30% higher in the markets where we're operating our own delivery teams. Yeah, just because they're obviously part of the article culture and able to deliver on that full brand experience.
Yeah, that actually makes total sense that you try to take control of that experience, because it's so important to how you measure success from a shopper experience or shopper journey standpoint. So great to see a case of a brand kind of taking control over a crucial element to what drives that customer satisfaction and ultimately that loyalty and that word of mouth. But in terms of the current situation specifically, I mean, we've seen a lot of brands have had to pivot, adapt. Some are offering new services. I mean, what has Article had to do to respond to new realities surrounding COVID? I mean, obviously, as online only and DTC, you don't have to worry about the store related issues. But was there anything in a digital sense, a fulfillment sense, that you had to really zero in on and prioritize?
Yeah, I mean, even though we don't have physical storefronts, COVID and the pandemic generally has had an incredible impact on the business. And really the biggest pivot we had to make very early on was moving the entire operation to contactless delivery. So this was sort of back in March. We just sent all of the HQ staff home to work from home, and really the sort of next most important thing was how do we ensure the safety of our sort of warehouse employees, and also our delivery teams who are out there, typically in people's homes, which is obviously not a great spot to be during a pandemic. So we very quickly, over the course of about 48 hours, collected a whole bunch of feedback directly from the folks on the front lines, the people out there making deliveries. We even had sort of drivers sharing back, or delivery teams sharing back photos of customers who were sort of leaving signs, in their sort of windows saying, please leave things outside and things. So we knew there was this, it wasn't obviously sort of statistically significant data, but we had this incredible sort of anecdotal feedback from our frontline employees that customers were requesting sort of heightened or different delivery protocols. And we also borrowed heavily, I guess, here from what was going on in the very high frequency delivery space. So particularly, food delivery, we were looking at what was going on with your Uber Eats and your DoorDashes of the world. And, those guys had all flipped relatively quickly to this contactless model. So we started to think about how can we apply that same sort of thinking to the delivery of furniture. And so again, in the space of 48 hours, really, we developed, really co-developed with our sort of frontline employees this contactless delivery protocol. We obviously had to think about a lot of things because, and particularly how we communicated this, because for a lot of customers, they're not expecting sort of to find a sofa at their door and have to, make that last sort of the final mile, I guess, from the door into their to their living room. So there was some hurdles we had to work through in terms of communicating that and making sure customers again knew what to expect, so it wasn't a surprise when there was a sofa at the door rather than being brought into the home. But really both I really put it down to integration of the entire logistics operation within Article. So having that firsthand experience coming back to the team meant that we were able to not only kind of collect that information much faster and realize the need, but also sort of deploy new standard operating procedures for those teams much faster than if we had to sort of do it through a network of third-party providers. So yeah, that's really the biggest change we've had to make. And again, just to really ensure the health and safety of not only our team, but our customers.
Yeah, really great takeaways there, I think. So one being that you took lessons from, I guess in an adjacent space, right? Restaurant delivery, which is, huge. They were kind of the first to move, in light of the current crisis, but then also, co-creation with your, your employees, the members of that delivery and fulfillment network, who are, the boots on the ground, so to speak. They're the ones that are doing the work. So it makes sense that you used, their experiences and their insights to guide the way, which is fantastic. I mean, in the spirit of this data-driven, nature of your business, I'm curious, since we're kind of in this interesting time because, we're far enough from the start of it, like we've seen, evolution, we've seen shifts in customer behaviors and business strategies, but we're also still very much in the heart of it, right? So we're kind of like stuck in the middle, for lack of a better word. So I'm curious about, any, lessons that you've uncovered so far about your customers, what they're not just, feeling or, thinking, like sharing with you all from a data standpoint, but, what they're actually doing, what their actions are, their behaviors are, like how that's kind of guiding your short-term and long-term strategy, right? Because I think, again, because we're kind of stuck in the middle, I think retailers are trying to determine, okay, what do we prioritize first? And like, how will this shape what we do over the next quarter or even the one after that? So I know that there are a few layers to that. So curious about, short-term, I guess, and then, the more long-term implications of what you've uncovered about your customer right now.
Yeah, I guess the most interesting thing off the bat was just the really incredible increase we saw in demand as sort of cities went into or states went into lockdown, or variations on lockdown depending on where you were. But as that sort of unfolded, we were fairly, I guess, confident as most people were that e-commerce would see e-commerce as a whole would see increased adoption, just driven by necessity, as storefronts were closed. What we weren't sort of sure about, I guess, was for our particular vertical, was furniture going to be something that people were thinking about? And frankly, we've been quite surprised at the I guess like the strength of demand over the past few months. So April, in April we saw we doubled year over year. We saw twice as many orders in April 2020 compared to 2019. And we've seen demand levels close to that since then, which has put an incredible amount of strain on the business. We weren't obviously prepared for that kind of influx. It was very difficult / impossible to predict. And obviously pandemic has also been causing disruptions to supply chains. And we're sort of remaking a lot of the, things like the contactless delivery. So we're remaking a lot of the operations in parallel. So, challenges everywhere. But I think the most interesting thing on the consumer behavior side was I guess like the degree to which it seems as though, home was an incredibly important place for people during this time. And I mean, makes sense. It's not particularly, crazy as an insight, but I think we saw strong demand in categories you'd expect to as people sort of adapted the functionality of their space. So things like home office were obviously like our desks sold out. We sold out of inventory of our desks very quickly. as people sort of rally to make sense of their sort of new normal. But what was perhaps more surprising was some of the categories like outdoor furniture was incredibly strong and continues to be for us this season, where people are really making the most of the space that they have, obviously not being able to travel or spend as much time with friends and family and in sort of other spaces, that making that that home space feel like somewhere where you want to spend time versus somewhere you have to spend time is has been a really interesting sort of thing to come out of the pandemic conditions. In terms of sort of short versus long term, it's definitely feels like we're in the middle of this still, so hard to make predictions. I think sort of short term, really the business is or our business is dealing with a lot of those very sort of I guess acute problems in terms of like how do we ensure we maintain inventory and things when we've got these huge runs of demand, and how do we forecast that into the future. So there's some very sort of like practical, tangible problems that we're trying to deal with. And in terms of keeping those sort of long term in mind for us as we deal with those, it's really, again, for us, like the stuff that we don't have stock of, the delivery times on that are much longer than we would like. You know, again, going back to why we were founded, a lot of that was around getting people furniture quickly and reducing that friction. And so for us, you know, the experience isn't maybe you know, up to our sort of, again, that remarkably better standard. So ensuring that we're able to, or that we're upfront about that and we're communicating really clearly with customers, and we're making sure that we're sort of, again, going back to transparency, and, you know, this isn't, you know, and as most people sort of understand, obviously, it's not, this isn't sort of a normal scenario, and so people are quite understanding, but making sure we're communicating that clearly so people don't get surprises or have their expectations not met, because that's when you start to sort of break that that sort of brand promise and lose that trust. So yeah, in terms of, for us, the long term here is making sure that we as much as possible maintain our standards, and where we're not able to, we communicate that really clearly.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for being so transparent with that, Duncan. I know a lot of companies are in the same boat, so it's interesting to see how Article is navigating that that reality, especially because there was that big spike in demand. And I'm glad you brought up just the lack of ability to foresee that, right? Because everyone's kind of referring to historical data, which, I mean, this type of situation has never been calculated before. So no one knows what kind of benchmarks to plan against, or what to, you know, what to refer to as accurate in you know, product inventory forecasting. So a lot of factors at play, but to your point, I do think there is that great opportunity to just be open with consumers, you know, connect with them in that one-to-one basis, which of course is the value of marketing, right? Make it more about, you know, we're here to help you in the long term. And, you know, I think your category has that opportunity to use content and use, you know, even like social media, you know, other forms of marketing to not just bridge those connections, but also offer valuable content to help them build a great space, because digital is, you know, it's better now, but digital is the majority of what we have now for interacting, you know, with others. So I'm sure there are so many great opportunities from that standpoint.
Absolutely. And also going back to, you know, the investments we've made in our delivery network, I think it makes a tremendous difference at times like these when things are a little bit challenging. Like if your sofa's a few days behind when you were expecting to receive it, and the delivery team shows up and they're sort of smiling and friendly, and I guess they're wearing masks now, so I don't know if you know if they're smiling, but you know, they're happy, and they're you know, again, delivering on that brand experience. It's different from sort of the, you know, we've all had that delivery experience where someone shows up and, you know, they quite clearly are just sort of ticking boxes and are just getting things done. So yeah, I think again that sort of understanding, because we are all in this, plus a sort of a dash of friendliness, or sort of delightfulness, goes a long way. So,
yeah. No, I think that's a great point. And, in the respect of, consumer behaviors, like you said, we're in the heart of this thing. So we don't necessarily know what the future will be like, but I'm curious, we're looking at the acceleration of a lot of trends right now. So the shift to digital and e-commerce, contactless, and a lot of speculation around what's going to stick. Maybe not to the level that it is now, but will be more ingrained in the retail toolbox, so to speak. So I would love your take, based on, hard data, or just based on, conversations that maybe you're having internally at Article. I mean, what do you think is going to become a mainstay in the industry, or the table stakes, the benchmarks for just operating as a solid business in the future? And I mean, again, we all know that we don't know what the future is going to bring. So feel free to, share as transparency, just knowing that we all are kind of in the same boat of uncertainty right now.
Yeah. So I think that the obvious thing that's happened is this sort of acceleration of adoption of e-commerce that we've seen. This sort of, if you like, the sort of 10 years fast forward, and we're fairly confident that while obviously that sort of rate of acceleration is unlikely to be maintained, that many of the people who have shopped for the first time in categories they maybe hadn't considered buying online in before, that'll likely stick. We've seen really record numbers of new customer acquisition during this time over the last few months, and again, like, it comes back to our ability to deliver on our brand promise. If we're able to do that, we believe that we can convert those people into sort of loyal online furniture shoppers. It's unlikely that they'll go back to the store and wait 8 weeks again when they've had the sort of sub 1 week delivery experience. And so I think that's sort of one thing. The other thing that's going to be interesting to look at is the sort of the degree to which sort of heightened awareness of health and safety issues and things stick around. And so we're expecting that contactless delivery will be certainly around for some time to come, and starting to think sort of longer term about how do we, like, what is a non-pandemic version of that service look like? It may not look exactly what it looks like right now, but certainly like that, heightened sense of concern and for people's safety and their family's safety means that I think we'll see people continuing to opt for sort of lower touch or lower contact methods of delivery. So we haven't figured out exactly what that looks like, but we're starting to think about what does that look like sort of longer term. And then the last thing that we're really particularly interested in is changing meaning of or changing meaning and function of what a home is. And obviously, a lot of us have been sort of thrust into a work from home environment or scenario, often in a sort of fairly quick and unprepared kind of way. So everyone's sort of been scrambling to figure that out. But longer term, what does that look like with, if more, it seems likely that a lot of businesses are going to have sort of more relaxed or are going to be more open to some form of remote work. And as particularly the sort of younger generation, steps into the predominant sort of home buying market, how are they going to think about that? Is that going to change sort of the kinds of spaces they're looking for? Will sort of younger folks move further out into sort of secondary hub cities and things like that, and opt to move into larger spaces so that they have more sort of room for both working and sort of home, if you like? And obviously that has all kinds of implications as a furniture brand for the kinds of products we want to offer. And even for for those who do decide to stick around in their apartment in New York or wherever, they'll need sort of those multifunctional pieces because they are having to use their space in different ways. So we're keeping a pretty keen eye on the degree to which sort of remote work is adopted, and certainly are anticipating some significant uptick. Remains to be seen sort of how far that or how much that changes.
Yeah, some fascinating points there, Duncan. I think at the retail industry level, at a higher level, but also for the category itself, definitely some fascinating trends, and I think implications for article moving forward. So, in spite of the uncertainty, a very exciting time and a time of learning, I think, for everyone. I think that's why this time is so exciting for us, as a media group, because our goal is to share insights, right, and learnings, and kind of bring a community together. So in that essence, to close out our conversation, since we're about up on our time together today, a two-pronged question for you around, one, what have you personally learned in this process, as the director of marketing, or looking at it through the lens of, the contactless fulfillment experience? Like, what have you learned? Like, what has helped kind of drive your focus and priorities professionally? And, second question is, what would you share as, a closing point of advice, even encouragement? Because again, we're all kind of dealing through, the situation together. We're all learning as we go. So any closing thoughts, I guess, for your peers?
Yeah, in terms of learning, for me, the sort of reflecting on this, the best learning we've had over the last few months is really having that clear sense of who we are as a business and a set of guiding principles to support that has been invaluable. The number of times we've sort of, been making what are fairly complex decisions with a whole number of variables and sort of imperfect information with which to make that decision, which is sort of an uncomfortable spot to be in if you're particularly, going back to our sort of data-driven nature. The number of times we've been having those conversations, but we've been able to sort of go back to what are we trying to do here? Like, how does this decision impact our ability to make it easy to create beautiful modern spaces, and how do we apply our guiding principles to this decision? Has been incredibly useful. So having that sort of very clear idea of who you are and what you're trying to be really cuts down on a whole bunch of sort of friction, and also helps, I guess, like galvanize and build momentum behind those decisions and buy-in across the business. So, that's sort of, I guess, like from a marketing perspective, I always believed really strongly in having that sort of core idea of who you are as a business and a brand, more so from communicating that externally. But I think given the sort of an unprecedented kind of challenge, global challenge going on, it really saw me or let me see how valuable that can be, applying that also internally. And then in terms of, I guess, advice, I think that what we learned from the sort of the Contactless project and a number of sort of other smaller initiatives is that this is while we're obviously all facing big challenges and significant sort of adversity here, I think that can be such an incredible motivating factor and an opportunity to drive change in your business. Things that would have taken months or years, we've been able to pull off in sort of days or weeks, just because there's been that urgency and sort of willingness on the part of the team to sort of roll up their sleeves and get things done. So I think in terms of sort of advice, there's, if there is a complex issue or something that you've been sort of wrestling with or putting on the back burner for years is sort of a too hard a challenge to tackle. There is no better time than when everything's kind of up in the air to sort of take a look and reshuffle everything and really drive that change based on how you deliver for your customers. So I think that's it.
Yeah, I love that. What a way to close out, Duncan. I think, like you said, it is a great time to kind of take a step back, reassess, and maybe uncover some new opportunities. It's been really enlightening and encouraging to hear from folks like yourself who are, encouraging that type of shift in terms of, how teams work, how they collaborate, and how they bring these new ideas to life. So thank you again so much for taking the time out to speak with me. Really fantastic conversation.
Yeah, really enjoyed it. Thank you.
And thanks everyone out there for watching. Take care now.